everyone. Vikings guy here, and I'm here with Brian, otherwise known on TikTok as Ball, the letter N Detroit. Brian, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Not much going on this week, right? I mean, pretty quiet week over in Detroit, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just going to watch basketball.
Yeah, that's a classic January thing to do in Michigan, right?
To be
Yeah.
fair, that's very true. Outside of last year, it was all right. Let's pay attention to the Pistons because the Lions are at home.
Yeah, it was hard to watch the Pistons last year. Let's be straight about that.
This year, they've done a lot better. They're floating around 500. Ivy did just get hurt for the season, a Hutchinson style injury, so we're a little
Uh,
down, but they're still playing hard.
That's a bummer. That's a bummer for him because he was playing very well, and you never like to see those kind of injuries, and you don't see them a lot in the NBA. So to see that was like very, very sad. Very
It was
sad.
tough. It was tough, but it's
Yeah,
like my all my focus has been on the Lions, so I haven't even digested that yet. Like it'll get
yeah.
there later in the season once the NFL season is over, but right now it's all Detroit Lions.
Well, I'd say the way it looks from this seat, you got about 2 weeks left of your season, so you'll have plenty of time before the NBA playoffs in June really start getting kicked off. So good for you. So I want to ask first off. We'll get into some of your background with Detroit and the Lions, but my main question here to start would be throughout the season, I think most people in the NFL thought and pretty much knew that the Lions were going to be very good. They didn't lose anybody. They added a couple guys that were really important, especially on the defensive side of things. Why were people in Detroit sort of surprised? Like, okay, the Vikings are 5-0. They've gotten breaks here or there. Was there a lot of surprise? Is there still a lot of surprise in Detroit that here you are in Week 18, really fighting for the division life? I mean, is that kind of crazy to you guys?
It is a little nuts. I will say it's kind of twofold. So for Detroit, it doesn't surprise us that we would have our greatest season in NFL history, and yet we still can't clinch the number one seed until the final week because that's Detroit.
Yeah,
Can't be
yeah,
easy for us. But I'd
yeah.
also say for football fans, when we saw the additions of Grenard, Van Ginkel, and we obviously we know the weapons that you guys have on offense, it was more so about competent quarterback play. Because I mean, just a couple of years ago, you guys were 13-4. So we knew the Vikings could put together wins and we knew that their roster was vastly improved. It was just a question about the quarterback position. And I,
Mm.
I would say that we weren't confident that Sam Darnold would play at the level he's playing at. So we didn't expect the Vikings to be there. But if you substitute any great quarterback play over there, the Vikings roster is as talented as anybody's.
Yeah. It's been interesting watching the Lions all year, in seeing the transition as Hutchinson gets hurt, as your defense has gotten banged up. And I have to say, it's been an unreal experience, I'm sure, for you guys. Injury after injury after. I mean, weird shit too. Carlton Davis with a broken jaw, like stuff that never happens. That Aiden Hutchinson thing was just broke my heart. I mean, he was out for 4 weeks, and he still led the league in pressures.
Yep.
And the thing is, I think he's the leading sacker on your team still.
He absolutely is. Well, no,
Yeah.
I think Zadarius Smith has 8, but if we're
Okay.
talking just from Detroit Lions,
From
players
Detroit,
from the
yeah,
season,
for
yeah.
your team that wasn't from another team. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, by far too, because I think the next best guy after Zadarius is like 3.5. Like we didn't have a pass
Yeah.
rush last year, and we didn't add anybody. We pretty much kept our guys. We added Davenport, but obviously we know he's injury prone. So it was Zadarius Smith. We'll see what he can do, but yeah. So
Yeah.
losing Hutch, that's huge.
I wish anybody from Detroit would have called me about that bum Marcus Davenport before the season, because we got about 2.5 really good games. When he played, he was great. And then I don't know, he broke a fingernail, and then it was like he was out for 7 weeks, and then he was completely healthy on like week 9, and he was like, "Nah, I kind of like just getting paid from my couch." So he just never came back. It was really an odd thing here, and we knew he had injury things, but it felt like when he gets hurt, he sort of just goes, you know, I got $1 million house. I think I'm just gonna sort of chill. And I don't want to defame the guy. If he's hurt, he's hurt. But when he was here, it was just like there was a lot of heat on him last year because it's like, uh, did somebody put Marcus Davenport on a milk carton yet? Because he's missing. Like, where did he go? And we could have used him last year because that defense was so broken down.
For sure. And I hate to make fun of the guy, but it does suck that his career has just been riddled with injuries. But I will tell you, in the 3 weeks that he played for John, he was productive. The guy, he was right behind Hutch in pressures. Like I was like, oh, this is
Yeah.
gonna be great. And then they're like, oh, he's out, and I'm like, oh, well, here it begins. And sure
Yeah.
enough,
I think I said to a couple guys, we got Marcus Davenport. How do you like him from last year? I said, when he played, what you said, when he played dominant, he played in a game against Carolina last year, had a couple sacks, was
yeah.
all over the quarterback. I mean, he was very good when he plays, but, Bud Grant, our fabled Hall of Fame coach, said, the best ability a player can have is availability. And that's just not been what Marcus Davenport can do. In looking at more at your defense, because I think that's probably where this game comes down to. I think adding Carlton Davis, and then having more pressure up front was important for you guys. How has it affected your defense not having Davis back there? Because it seems like the offensive strategy of the Lions is, hey, we're going to do 12-minute drives so that the defense only has to play 3 or 4 minutes every quarter, really.
Well, I mean that has to be the strategy. I mean, going into at the end of last season, we knew having Cam Sutton as our number one cornerback, we were going to have to send safety blitzes, linebacker blitzes to generate pressure because it wasn't getting there because they were double teaming Hutch. And so this year you revamp the secondary and you get a guy like Carlton Davis who is a number one corner who he's a savvy veteran. He's not going to fall for certain moves, and then he goes out. And now you have Terrion Arnold, who's a rookie, who's going to make rookie mistakes. He gets a little handsy, but he has played more man snaps than any other corner in the league. So
Wow.
so I expect to have some penalties, but when your defensive line does not generate any pressure, they're going to pick apart the secondary. It's just natural.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's it. And it's I I oftentimes, because I work at US Bank Stadium, and I talk to a lot of NFL executives, and I think it's funny. I had a Packer fan. He came on and he said, well, the reason that the Packers are going to beat the Vikings last week is because the Packers beat the Seahawks by more. And I said to him, I'm glad this is your first day on the planet. Welcome. You chose the wrong football team. There's number two. Number three, that's not how NFL matchups work.
At all.
It may be in Major League Baseball, but it doesn't work in the NFL. It doesn't translate because every team has things they do well. Every team has things they don't do as well. The matchups are better. It was raining when we played them. I mean, they had Kenneth Walker play. I mean, there's lots of reasons why. Well, I think your game against Seattle was tight for a while, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely it was.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they always play us tight. I mean, that was our first victory against Seattle in what, 6, 7 matchups. So,
yeah.
they had our number. If I
We
were to look at how we played common opponents, the storyline would say that the Lions would destroy the Vikings this week, based off of the AFC East, or I'm sorry, the AFC South.
see South, yeah.
Tennessee 52 points, Jacksonville 52 points. You know what I mean? Like we put up massive games against these teams, and they were a little bit closer, other than the Houston game for the Vikings. But we know that
Right.
that's not how this matchup is going to work. Like there's different strategies against different teams. We expect this to be a very close game. An offensive game, I do worry about that Vikings offense, to be completely honest. Brock Purdy looked incredible last week. You know what I
With a
mean?
bad arm. He had a bad arm too.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And I don't want to take anything. I put this stuff on my TikTok, and I'm sure you see it, and that's why I warned you last night. Lions fans will defend Kirby Joseph. They'll defend him, and he's a great player. Okay,
yeah.
that I know. Sometimes in the NFL, because I have friends who are in the NFL, when you have to make a tackle, sometimes your angle ain't right. Right? Sometimes when Kirby, and you don't have to agree, but sometimes when Kirby Joseph takes angles, they're angles that I don't know if the intent is to hurt, but when he makes the tackle, I don't think there's a regard for how it turns out. It's I'm making that tackle at the angle I can do. Specifically, that launch that he made at Tucker Craft, I hated it
Sure.
because there was no scenario there when you're launching at 3 feet and you hit him there that's going to turn out good for Tucker Craft. And again, it's not his job to care about that, but just give me your thoughts on that because I have a hard time with Kirby Joseph and just kind of the way he handles his business sometimes. I'll let you speak on it. I could be completely wrong. It's just one guy's opinion from the outside.
For sure. So when I think of Kirby Joseph, the guy. I mean, obviously he's a competitor, as so many guys are.
Right.
Has he ended up on the wrong side of some of these collisions from the standpoint of, a guy getting hurt? He has. JJ Watt kind of pointed it out, through one of the tackles. He's like, what is the guy supposed to do? He's aiming for the thigh board. He's already smaller. He is ducking his head. So naturally his body's going to go in even further downward trajectory. And to your
Yeah.
point, John, that a lot of times will lead to injuries. I point back to something that Larry Fitzgerald said when he was playing. He's like, listen, the rules are set up for guys to go low. But if you go low, you're going to end up injuring me. Go high. If they fine you, I'm going to pay your fine, but at least it'll allow me to play further. I
Yeah.
mean, Kirby Joseph has not been fined for any of those quote
Right.
unquote dirty hits. And I understand, like if I'm an opposing, player or a fan of an opposing team, I'm going to say the same thing. I'm going to call him dirty, just like, they called Sue dirty and so forth. But Kirby Joseph is a baller. I don't think that he's intentionally trying to hurt anybody. I really don't. He is a thin defensive back. And when you go against these guys that are 6'7", like you go up high, they're going to embarrass you. You're going to hurt
Yeah.
yourself trying to
Yep,
tackle them.
you're
So
right.
you go low, and it's such a split, quick decision. It ends up being maybe a little bit too low, but it's still not a penalty. You know what I mean? And I,
Yeah.
I get it. I feel the same way, but I don't think he's a dirty player. I do think it's been some, a few unfortunate hits. But if we do look back or at, even the Vikings, there's been some plays where some teams are like, well, wait a minute, did Harrison Smith go a little low? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's
Right.
always, did Murphy go a little low?
Yeah.
Like you'll find some of those. It just so happens that a couple guys got hurt, and then that whole Stafford clip with him saying that. But Stafford is just a salty baby. So, if you want to get into that,
With
I'll
the
get into
with
the
the
Stafford thing.
with the ring though, right? With the
with,
ring.
with the ring.
Yeah, I know.
Listen,
I'm not going to pour into Stafford because he's always been sort of a baby, and
yeah.
the thing is he suffered for a long time as a Lions quarterback, and some of it was self-inflicted. But yeah, the issue I'd had with Joseph in those tackles, because I don't know inherently if he's trying. I don't think he's trying to hurt people. I don't think I want to think that of anybody. His helmet always goes down. They teach you to have your helmet up. He always goes down, which naturally lowers where he's going to end up,
Right,
and it
right.
becomes more of an injury type thing. And I've never really like to say dirty. Maybe is sort of disingenuous because Dominican Sue was dirty. He'd stomp on people. He'd kick people. He'd do like things that guys would go, why are you stomping on people? And it's kind of like you've had players. I don't know how much baseball you watch, but there's somebody. We had AJ Pierzynski on the Twins.
Mm-hmm.
And when he played for us, we're like, he's the guy that's going to sit behind the plate as catcher and talk shit for 2 hours, which you loved.
Mm-hmm.
But then you see him on the other team, and I'm like, I would just want to punch you right in the privates because you are so nasty. And that's
Listen,
maybe that's maybe how Branch is like, hey, listen, you may not like me out here. My teammates love me and I make plays. And what are fans supposed to say? Like, it's not Laporta's knee being blasted out. I mean, if another player did that to two other players and he's on your team, you're probably just like, eh. I mean, it's bad, but it's not us. It's tough. It's really hard because these guys all have to make a living. And I think what fans forget is that part like I had an interview with Chad Greenway, who used to play for the Vikings, and he said, there's this sort of code of conduct we follow, like this, because we all know it's our money, right? And when someone doesn't follow that, it riles us all up. And I think that's part of the reason that Joseph didn't make the Pro Bowl is because I think there are some players that see that and go, I don't like it. Uh, I don't want to
so
drag it on, but
well, no, no,
you
no.
know,
So my thoughts are like there is a code of conduct, but I would also say it is we can't forget about when we look at other plays and we see the same type of hit. Just because a guy
yeah,
doesn't get injured doesn't mean that was necessarily a clean hit. You know what I mean?
right,
If we're gonna tab Joseph's hits as dirty, we've got to look at the same type of hit coming from a Vikings player and say, hey, that was
yeah,
a dirty hit. The guy got up, or the guy just happened to plant his leg at that time. Like these are bang bang plays. A guy, it's not like he timed it to say, you know what, as soon as he leaps forward and that leg hits the turf, that's when I'm going to make the impact. That it just
yeah,
happened to be in that situation. So I really don't think it's intentional. Like we see these plays a lot throughout the league. Joseph just
Yeah.
happens to be, in a couple where, some guys got hurt. Did it affect him getting to the Pro Bowl? I got to be honest, now, I don't give a damn about the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl has been a joke for a while. I care about all
Yeah.
pros.
No, I
Watch,
agree. Yeah.
watch,
Yeah.
watch you,
They
watch you
care
get
more
all
about
pro.
the all pro stuff. They care more about the all pro stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because that's really where the rubber hits the road is the all
Tyler
pro.
Huntley was a Pro Bowler. Like, he was a backup that played 2 games behind Lamar Jackson a couple years ago and was a Pro Bowler. Like, the Pro Bowl means nothing in my eyes.
Yeah. It's kind of sad what it's become because in the 80s and 90s those were games, man.
Yeah.
The players were hitting each other, they were scoring 50 points apiece. It was your favorite quarterbacks throwing to your favorite players. It
Yeah.
was now this Pro Bowl game stuff is kind of weak.
It is.
So yeah, so moving on to the game, it sounds like you're predicting a lot of offense maybe.
So I am. I am. The thing is like when I look at Minnesota's team, they are incredibly balanced. We know they have a very explosive offense, not quite to the level of Detroit's because Detroit,
Yeah.
for a few different factors, like, they're, you know, about just as much talent. Detroit maybe has a slightly better offensive line. And I would also say that our OC is probably the hottest guy in the league right now. You know what I mean? Just
Oh,
from
for
a play
sure.
calling standpoint.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
for that, I would give us the edge offensively. Minnesota has the edge defensively by a lot. If this were the Lions prior to week 5, I'd say, you know what? They're a little bit closer. I'd still give the edge to Minnesota. But then you also got to look at what Flores has done. Like the way that he's implemented his defense, tons of credit to him. I do
Yeah.
expect the Lions to break through. I know in the first quarter, Minnesota dominated us when we went to Minnesota. They were up 10-0. Our offense couldn't get anything. And then they made adjustments in the second half and they realized, hey, if he's bringing 9 guys into the box and then we don't know which ones he's dropping, we got to run motion. We got to do that Sean McVay style of offense. And that's when we figured it out. When Detroit then figured it out and went up 21-10, I thought, we're going to blow the brakes off of Minnesota. But then Minnesota battled back. And at that moment, that's when I knew Minnesota was for real. So I don't really know how this game will go, but I do expect a lot of points.
Yeah. It's interesting. Flores last week against the Packers, one thing he hadn't done a lot all season is man defense. And he come out against the Packers almost fully in man for about 2.5 quarters.
Yeah.
And they to say they were starstruck is an understatement. I mean, LaFleur said after the game, we just did not expect them to play so much man. And so it's interesting. The thing I like about Flores is about a month ago, he says, because someone had mentioned, how come your defense seems to just always make a play in the fourth quarter? And he said, I may save a few plays for the end of the game. I may save a few. And I think because what you start to see, especially like in that Seattle game, even in that Detroit game, you start to see more sacks. You see more weird pressures. We were a Jared Goff fumble away from winning that game. 1 third down away from salting away the game. Ifs and buts are candies and nuts, right? It doesn't matter if you win by 1 or if you win by 30. As much as I'd like the Vikings just to go into Detroit and just walk out of there scoring 50, and you guys, something happens and you score 14, that's not how this is going to be. Because I work at US Bank Stadium, man. I've worked there for 9 seasons. Almost every game has been what I call a 5-minute meat grinder. At the end, it's you make sure you take your break at work early because at the end of the game, I mean, honestly, we should just sell the fourth quarter because half the time that's what really matters in that place is the fourth quarter. We were down 19-6 against the Cardinals,
Yeah.
and there was a lady there. She was wearing a Bills hat with her boyfriend who was a Vikings fan, and I had a game day pin on that I'd bought, Cardinals Vikings, and she said, "Where'd you get that?" And I said, "They sell them over there, but they're sold out." And she said, "Well, how about this? When the Vikings come back and win, I get your pin." We're down 19-6. It's the fourth quarter. I thought, what do I have to lose? I said, when we win, I said, I get to pin it on you. What was it, 23-22, whatever? I'm like, all right, here we go. I mean, I will say this. Last season, we were 2-6 at US Bank Stadium. It was a rough existence. Losing like that when you work around the team like that it's not great.
Yeah.
And so I think for Vikings fans this year, a lot of it felt like found money. And, we just keep winning games and you go, well, because I grabbed my sheet out. I actually predicted 10-7,
Okay.
which I thought if Darnold is serviceable, that's a generous record, knowing that the defense should be good. Defense will you at home over a few games. And then once they hit 10 wins, I thought, God, we're 10-2. Like, okay, well, we'll just win a couple more and see if Detroit can lose one. And then you guys lost to the Bills, and I go, okay, now if we just win the rest of our games,
Yeah,
that's all we got to do,
that's
right?
it.
Simple. Just win the rest of our games. Detroit wins all of them except the last one. You only got to win 15 games, Brian. I mean, 15 games? You
That's
play
it.
17, you can't win 15?
How easy is that?
I mean, what is going on?
Turns out if you
Like,
win 14, you go on the road for the playoffs.
I mean, seriously, I mean, in my wildest imagination, I could never imagine a division where you have to win 15 games to win the division. Like,
Real.
what the hell is going on? And then one of us is going on the road for the playoffs,
Yep.
which I still think they should reseed like the NBA. They should just lay that thing out based on record.
So I'll be honest. There's a part of me that wants to say that just as a fail safe, like, oh, if the Lions lose, it's unfair. We should be at home. But you know what? The rules are set up this way. And if we end up, let's say the Lions do lose this game, I'm confident in our ability to go on the road. You know what I mean? Just like I'm sure you're confident in Minnesota's ability to go on the road. Like, what did you only lost one road game all
One
year?
on the road, yeah, one on the road to the Rams. The first game they brought back, you lucky suckers. The first game they brought back, well, I guess maybe they had Cup, but Nakua and Cup were back for that game.
They were. Now Nakua
Yeah,
did get hurt in the second half, but
yeah,
yeah, they
yeah,
were both healthy when we played them in the playoffs the year before. Like the Rams are a tough team, and we knew, and it went into overtime. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
they played both of us very closely, and there's a chance that one of us will have to go on the road to play the Rams.
yeah, yeah. It's tough. I mean, the way this thing's shaping up, if regardless who wins on Sunday between us, it's likely the Packers are going to go to Philly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, and what are your thoughts on that, John? How do you see that going?
Well, I never cheer for the Packers, right? It's kind of like Mark Twain, the famous writer, said, you never, ever, ever laugh at anyone's funeral, but it doesn't mean you can't smile at their obituary, right? Like, I would never cheer for the Packers, but if the Packers went into Philly and took out, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because if they go into Philly and take out Philly, thank you for taking out the garbage. Appreciate
Sure.
it, because there's very few teams I dislike as much as the Eagles, just because most of their fans are a pain in the ass.
Agreed.
When I say mostly a pain in the ass, they're a pain in the ass. But then the problem is, if we're the number one seed, where Green Bay's headed next,
Yeah.
right?
And
And
you
we
hate
got
to
those
play
dinks back. We got those dinks for the second time in our building. And I have to tell you, I've watched the NFL a long time. That hardly ever turns out right.
I know. I know. Listen,
And for us to lose to Green Bay at our place in the playoffs, dude.
I,
I mean, are you kidding me? I'll just shut this thing down. I'll be this dead guy at TikTok.com, because honestly, man, there's few things I can't. I always keep receipts on that game. I'd just be like, nope, my internet, I didn't pay my bill this month. Sorry, folks. I'll see you next May or whatever.
that is funny that you say that because there are certain scenarios that I've mapped out. And like, let's say Detroit beats Minnesota. I don't want to see Minnesota and Detroit in the playoffs. Like, I don't want to see them a third time because those first two wins will have meant nothing if we lose in the playoffs. Same thing with Green Bay. We beat them twice. I don't want to see them in the playoffs. Like, but there's three of us in the playoffs. Like, you know what I mean? The chances one of us is gonna rematch.
The last thing you want to do, man, is play a division game in the playoffs,
Yeah.
because we know you dinks, you know us dinks. There's very few things. I'll say Ben Johnson could come up with some weird shit, because every game he does something. I go,
The
that
stumble
fucking
bomb.
guy. He just the stumble bomb, that hook and ladder. I was watching that game, because that's the game we got was the Detroit game against Chicago, and I was like, wait, I think he purposely fell down, because he didn't really fall down. He just sort of like tipped over.
Yeah.
And then and it was perfect, because then Laporte is open in the end zone. I thought, you know what? To me, I almost thought that was, hey, Chicago, this could be you.
Yes.
This could be me and you. Because I think, and I've said this for weeks, I think he's going to end up in Chicago.
I do too. He's been
Which I
very.
hate. I hate that.
I
Because
hate
instantly, Caleb goes from being sort of a bum to being not a bum at all.
it. Yep.
Yeah,
Because
sucks. Dude,
they'll
that
improve
sucks.
Chicago's offensive line, and then they'll have a competent coordinator and or a competent head coach that can call plays.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that. Like that worries me because the things that he's pulled out of the bag this season, he's going to pull it out of the bag on the Lions in our division, and I that's going to hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
He comes into Detroit and pulls that shit. I mean, because, I remember, I'll never forget, it was Ben Johnson. It was against Detroit. We needed to make a stop. This is a couple years ago, maybe 22 or 21. And the fucking guy throws a pass to Panay Sewell off the right side. And I thought, you son of a bitch. Like, damn it. And Sewell was so happy.
yeah,
He's just so happy to catch a pass. He's all big here and little legs, right?
yeah,
That's Sewell. Like, he's giant here and then goes, boop.
uh
And
huh,
I see him catch that pass, and I've never seen a lineman so happy, maybe except for when Skipper catches one, right?
yeah, I know,
It just sucks. I mean, who's tackle eligible this time? Decker, Skipper,
yeah,
Sewell.
seriously,
I'm at some point Ragnow will be flipped around or Glasgow. One of those guys will get flipped around,
yep,
and that often. And I will say this: the thing that saved, in my opinion, as an onlooker, the thing that saves Jared Goff's career is putting that offensive line in front of him.
yeah,
Because when he didn't have that kind of offensive line, he was really could be average at
yeah,
times, and you just have seen the elimination short of that Houston game. Which thank you, Jared Goff, for throwing 5 interceptions because that's the same day Darnold threw three that afternoon, and Lions fans were all over my ass. Look at he's coming down to earth. And
yeah,
then, like, you would think Detroit was nuked off the map after 9 o'clock because Goff had thrown five and they were saying nothing,
yeah,
nothing.
yeah,
But yeah, but Goff, ever since he's had this offensive line, has just been remarkable. Really, those negative games, he'll have one here and there,
yeah.
but they just don't repeat.
And honestly, for me, like, I keep it real with Jared Goff. Like, I love the guy. I think he's great for us. But you also, when you acquire a guy like that, you have to understand what his limitations are and what's going to make him great. If you put him behind an average offensive line, he's going to regress tremendously to the point to where he's going to be average or worse. Like if
Yeah,
Jared Goff is pressured, not blitz, but if he's pressured, he can be one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. So it is imperative for a GM to put an elite offensive line. And that's why they've invested so much money into the offensive line, because if you protect him, he's one of the best. And I mean, 36 touchdown passes. What is he, top five in the league? So
yeah,
they have to do that. Now, if we sustain an injury on the offensive line, there's always concerns.
yeah. Gibbs at your main running back. They keep floating this Montgomery coming back.
He's not.
You got to be careful not to sell the house and not have a place for the chickens, right? I mean, because you bring Montgomery back, I don't think Anzalone's going to play tomorrow.
No,
I and here's the thing, like I like the subterfuge of it because with Anzalone on that defense, it is a better defense
yeah,
in that linebacker crew because no nothing against Neiman or whatever, but
right.
you're not going to win a Super Bowl with him. If he's your main guy going up against the Chiefs or whoever, if you end up going to the Super Bowl, that's a tough matchup for anybody. But you'd have to have Anzalone back there, in my opinion. But with my question there was with Montgomery out. Do you feel good enough with Gibbs running inside that you guys can get enough on the running game to push through against some of the better teams?
I do. Don't get me wrong. Like Monty certainly has a major purpose on this team because he gets the tough yardage. He is the inside running back, but Gibbs can
Mm,
run on the inside. He just has to be patient. Obviously when you have that game changing speed, a lot of times you try to hit the hole a little too fast. And for him, be a little bit more patient when you're running between the tackles. Now, if you're running on the outside, that's a different story. But I think, this is what, year two for him, towards the end of year two. I think that, need be, like, if you have to feed him 20, 25 times, he's going to get the job done. He's certainly electric. It's kind of like, when you had the Ingram and Kamara, like if Ingram goes down, Kamara takes over. Like, I think we're certainly fine. Our offensive line is healthy. I'm not too concerned with Monty being gone just because Gibbs, Gibbs he can be an every down back if he needs to be.
right. Yeah. Tell me more, and Viking fans more about Tim Patrick because he's a guy that's been big for you guys. Former Bronco. I don't think there were a lot of expectations, more of a reclamation project when you brought him in. Had a lot of talent,
Yeah.
just never was what he could be in Denver. Talk a little bit more about Tim Patrick.
So I mean, Tim Patrick over the last couple of years has had just some major injuries that has kept him out. He's always been a guy that's been a very good red zone target. You know, he's 6'4", he's a big body guy. He's something that a lot of teams could use, you know, and when you think
Right.
about Detroit, we have a 6'1", Jameson Williams, 6 feet, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who might be 5'11". You know what I mean? Like we have small guys. We need that big
Yeah.
body target, you know, since Josh Reynolds left and went to the Broncos, last season. So this guy, he's a willing blocker, and I love the fact that like he's just trying to come back and play football. He doesn't need the targets, but the guy, when he gets his opportunities, he catches the ball because he's always been that type of receiver. He's always a guy
Yeah.
with really good hands and just needs the opportunity. But Denver hasn't had a consistent quarterback in since Peyton Manning. It feels like, you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, he really hasn't had an opportunity. Like if Patrick, let's say Patrick was a number one receiver with a good quarterback, he could put up some pretty solid numbers. He's not going to beat Mike Evans or anything, but he beat Mike Evans like, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it's good. I think people get that size down below, especially for you guys, is underrated or not rated enough because you're right. Amon Ra is sort of slight. Jamison is tall-ish, but he's what,
And
130 pounds
yeah,
basically. I mean, he's real thin. I mean, he's not 130, but he's a thin
he's
guy,
not,
right?
he's thin, yeah.
He's not big that way. So on your offense, and I don't want to make it all about just peppering you with questions, but
No, I appreciate
on your offense, who's somebody there that you expect to have a big game tomorrow?
it. Ooh, that's a good one. So honestly, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think, if there's anybody the lights are not going to be too bright for, he is the leader of this team. Don't get me wrong, like Jared Goff is the leader, he's the quarterback. But when we talk about like skilled position players,
Yeah,
Gibbs is great, electric. But one of Gibbs' last memories in the playoffs was that fumble on our 25-yard line in San Francisco and allow San Francisco to come back. You know what I mean? So it's like things happen. Not placing any blame, but I expect Amon-Ra St. Brown to kind of be that steadying force to be like, listen, I'm a sure-handed receiver. You get the ball my way. I don't have to go deep for many yards, but when it's third down, you look my way. I'm going to secure the ball. I'm going to keep the chains moving. I think he's a guy to keep an eye on. I'd love for Laporta to get more involved. Over the last few weeks, he had a slow start to the season, but Amon-Ra, I think, is the guy. I certainly think is the
yeah.
guy, and then everybody else will feed off of him.
Do you think? I guess how do I want to phrase this? Tomorrow, if you were to play this game out, and let's just say that, let me 3, 2, 1. Let's try this again.
Mm.
If you, in your wildest dreams this season, you guys win the Super Bowl, that's sort of what you expected. If you don't win the Super Bowl this year, have there been enough good moments throughout your season to go, we did okay, I can accept where we end up? Or is it Super Bowl or bust in Detroit? Just what is your take, and then what do you think the city feels? Because here, people don't understand why Viking fans are so bitter every year. It's because we're the third winningest team in the history of the NFL since
Yeah,
1970, and we've won no Super Bowls.
sure.
And so, like for us, okay, I think there's teams like Jacksonville. Hey, you're 10-6, and everybody goes, "Yay, we're ten and
Right,
six."
right.
Right? We're 10-6. It's like, f you, man. We don't care, but we've made the playoffs 34 times in our history. We don't really. It's not that we don't give a shit, but what is the playoffs? Unless you're really in it to win it, Viking fans don't really give a shit. So answer the question, I guess. Do you think if you don't win the Super Bowl this year, do you think Lions fans will look back and say, what was it all worth?
That's a great question. First off, I will say that expectations change as the season kind of goes on. Like going into the season, everybody's like, we can make the Super Bowl. We should have made it last year. Like we have an opportunity to. So then obviously we have all these injuries that come up. And I'm not a guy that's going to ever blame anything on injuries, but it would also be foolish to not look back and say, man, if we do fall short, what we could have done if we were just a little bit healthier, if we hadn't lost
Yeah.
half of our defensive starters. You know what I mean? Like,
That's unbelievable for you to say that. Half.
yeah, yeah. It's
And not your backups, dude. These are not third string linebacker. This is
yeah,
Aleem McNeil. This is, I mean, this is Hutchinson. You
Hutch,
know, a
Carlton
top
Davis,
two Carlton Davis.
Anzalone, Derek Barnes, who's our second linebacker. You know what I mean? Like it's just been, and even our
Well,
second,
Mosley's been in and out. I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
Mosley's been out.
I
Rakestraw, our second round rookie, injured reserve. You know what I mean? It's just been,
yeah,
Davenport. I know he was going to be our starter. He was our starter going
yeah.
into the season, and then it's like it's just injury after injury. So, and this is for a team that was one of the worst defensive teams last year, and you have all these injuries. So it's like we expected Super Bowl because we had improved at all these positions. Then you lose it, you kind of go back to say, okay, we still are capable, but also at the same time, like if we do fall short, I don't think it's going to be disappointing. It'll be if we let's say we lose first round, for example, or let's say second round. Hopefully we get the bye, but you know what I mean. If we happen
Hey,
to,
get yourself in the right frame of mind for playing next week, okay? That's important. Okay, Brian, that's important.
no, I
Just get in
listen
that frame of mind where, hey, we're just five. We're cool with it. Brother, I like you regardless. If
no,
you're five or if you lose in the first round,
for sure. No,
whatever
listen.
happens.
If we somehow fall to the fifth seed and we go and we lose first round, I want to say that. Well, first of all, I'm going to be very disappointed because number one, it's going to be to either the Rams if we were to lose. Let's say we play week one, or it's going to be who's another opponent?
Could be Tampa.
Tampa Bay played us really well in the playoffs last year. This will be our fourth matchup against Tampa if we were to play them. And Tampa was the giant slayer this season. They were beating a lot of quality teams when they were healthy. So I
Yeah,
do not take any. The thing is, I don't take any of these teams lightly. Like the
right.
Vikings, the Packers, our division. The Rams, the Tampa Bay, Philly, and then you know what I mean. It's just we are. It's littered with teams that I don't want to see any of them. Like
Right.
we'll play any of them, obviously, but it's
Yeah.
like how there's normally a couple teams where you're like, I'd rather match up against them. I can't really
Yeah.
say that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
It's weird. They say the NFC is down, but who's better right now than Baker or Stafford?
Right.
I think Philly, I don't want to underplay Philly, but I don't trust their coaching staff. I think Sirianni's a bit of a mess. I think
Yeah.
it's a really poorly coached team. I saw that a couple, 3 weeks ago where Sirianni's in a pushing match with one of his players, and the D coordinator, the D line guy, steps in and pushes Sirianni back.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this: if I'm Sirianni, I fire his ass the next day.
Yep.
I say, hey, listen, because you got to establish that I'm the guy in charge, and if you think I'm not, guess what? You work somewhere else.
Yep. There's a
And he didn't. That thing's a mess. And I said this too to Packer fans, and they hate it. Every time we play the Packers, Mike LaFleur pisses his pants in front of the entire nation. Because he always gets angry and he throws stuff. There was a penalty called in our first Packers game at Lambeau, and he got a penalty for unsportsmanlike conduct. And then there's Kevin O'Connell, who's like this.
Yep.
And he knows when to yell. Like he'll say, "Hey, what's with that? What's with that?" He doesn't stomp and throw his head set. And I think there's something to be said about steady leadership.
Yeah. Agreed.
Um,
Agreed.
and even with Campbell, I mean, Campbell gets fired up at his players, but he doesn't. To me, it's like that's part of who he is. And
Yeah.
LaFleur almost has to try to be that angry. It just doesn't feel natural. Um, if there's anything, and I'll throw this out there, if there's anything you could change about Dan Campbell and the way he coaches, what would you do?
And so that's a tough question when we talk about the history of Jim Schwartz and Caldwell and Matt Patricia and just some
Don't
terrible
forget Marty Morningweg.
Marty
Marty Morningweg.
Morningwig, Martin Mayhew, and yeah. Listen,
We're not going to mention Wayne Fonts. He was credible. I loved Wayne Fonts. Wayne Fonts looked like he could sit down at the bar and have a beer with you, right?
no,
And he
absolutely.
was a good coach. Wayne Fonts, and they fire guys that are good.
They did. They
Anyways,
they
continue
fired
on.
Caldwell, who had a winning record 3 out of 4 seasons. He went nine
Yeah.
and seven. They fire him. They bring in Patricia. Disaster. With Campbell, for him being one of our most successful coaches, especially in recent history with playoff success, it's tough to say I'd want to change anything because who he has been and the decisions he's made has gotten us to this point. It's always Monday morning quarterback or in hindsight to say, oh, I don't want to be, I don't want to be reckless with my aggression and going for it. But that got us so far. I don't blame him for the 49ers loss. I blame Reynolds for not catching the ball. I blame Gibbs for a fumble. You know what I mean? Things like that. I would
Yeah.
just say I want to make sure that he doesn't let his emotion take over when it comes to play calling. Like we are an aggressive team. We're going to go for it. I don't know that I love going for it on the 30-yard line against the Vikings and turning the ball over on downs in the first quarter. It was 4th and 7. Now I get
Yeah.
it. It was 3rd and 24. You get 17 yards. You get your emotion. You're hyped up. We don't necessarily need to go for it there, especially against a team that's 5-0. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think the one thing, because I one knock that I had on Campbell was just I think sometimes when you live in that world, you sort of feel like you can win in that world all the time, and they've been very good at it. The best team on fourth down in the last 3 years has been the Lions. The best team on defense in fourth down the last 3 years has been the Vikings. And with Campbell, it's like I think situationally he has to embrace the fact that January in the NFC Championship at San Francisco is different than October in Jacksonville week 9, right? Like the stakes, and someone says, well, his kicker wasn't that good. Then get a new kicker. At any point last year, they could have tried out a new kicker.
Well,
I
they
mean,
did this
take those
season.
points because as it turns out, you don't take the points, you lose by basically that amount. I mean, you're right though. It's kind of like in the NFC Championship in 2009. The Saints were dirty. They were absolutely dirty. They got caught with Bounty Gate, whatever. Even Chad Greenway said we were sitting on the sideline during that game watching Favre get killed, and we thought they're breaking the code of conduct between players. Like
Mm.
we know they're taking latitudes they shouldn't, right? But even that '09 game, like people say, God, the Vikings, they got screwed because Favre got hit. Nope. We turned the ball over 4 times. We fumbled it. We fumbled it 5 times or 4 times. We had 500 yards of offense. People forget that the Vikings and Favre that day had 500 yards of offense.
Yep.
We were one stupid throw across your body
Peterson,
from
we
going to the
fumbled.
Super Bowl. And you know what our announcer said after it happened? You ever hear that?
No, what?
Paul Allen, our radio announcer, says, he goes, "Come on, man! This ain't Detroit. This is for the Super Bowl." Because he goes, you play Detroit when they were shitty.
Yeah,
They'd lost 16 games the year before.
yeah.
So that was kind of the phrase, like, man, this ain't Detroit. We're playing for the Super Bowl. You don't throw it across your body. Favre could have ran for 4 yards. Longwell field goal. And nobody even talks about Sean Payton anymore, right? Probably
Right,
gets bounced
right.
out 3 years later, and he's a has been, never will be. But man, I can appreciate what Campbell tries to do. Um, I've said, and I said it the last 2 seasons, just from the outside looking in, there are two things that were going to destroy the Lions' chance of winning everything. It was Jared Goff having what we used to call a Jared Goff game, or what Lions fans will understand is SOL.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
you know what that is.
Oh,
You
wait.
want to enlighten my fans what that SOL stands for?
It's a distant phrase that hasn't applied for 3 years. It's called same old Lions. No, and honestly, until last year, if we had made it to the
Yeah,
playoffs and lost that home playoff game, first off, if we would have found a way to not clinch that home playoff game, that would have been same old Lions. If we would have lost week
yeah,
1, it would have been same old Lions. That moniker would have stuck with us until we made the NFC Championship game, and then losing it after having a big lead. That's not same old Lions because the same old Lions would have never made it
would
that far.
never been there.
You
Yeah,
know.
when I said SOL, the look on your face, all the color drained out of it. It was like there was nothing left of you. You were just pale.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I've been saving that in the holster here. Been saving that and saving that. That's
No,
awesome. I hate to have a gotcha moment. This ain't Geraldo or, Hannity. I did one of those things where it's like, hey, how about this? Remember when you did this? Um,
but I would say
no, but
to
yeah,
your point though, you were saying like those moments about like what could derail the Lions. I would say this about Campbell's style. It's kind of like if you think back to the Golden State Warriors, their run to the championships. They made it that far by hitting threes. They were a 3-point shooting team. If you then all of a sudden get into the playoffs and you say, you know what, we're going to be a little bit more conservative. We're going to cut back on some of our threes and we're going to get more safe buckets, more drives to the hole. Like you didn't change your style of play, but
yeah,
why? You got to do what makes you successful. I would just say I don't want him to change who he is. I just want to make sure that he thinks everything through, and if he decides to go for it, I'm going to support him. I'm going to
yeah.
support him.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I don't think in kind of looking at what could sink the line. So Goff, Campbell doing Campbell stuff at weird times. And people and I said in that Bills game, a lot of people were outraged at the 12-minute onside kick. You had bigger problems there. And I pointed out in one of my videos with 2:43 left in the fourth quarter, he had 3 timeouts and they ran that sucker down to the 2-minute warning and he could have called a timeout and he basically worked off 40 seconds.
Yeah.
It was more than 40 seconds because they kicked the field goal. It was like a minute 58. So it was like 45 seconds that he kind of licked away. And that's the kind of stuff that when you get into big games, not that Viking fans know anything about winning big games, right? We know how to blow them and we're like, hey, how do you not get cancer? You eat right and you exercise. We hope we don't get cancer, but cancer's there, right? We've heard this is how you do things. So I'm not going to lecture Lion fans or whatever, but that same old Lions thing, I mean, dude, welcome to the Thunderdome. It's pain central here. It's sadomasochism like on the wall. Like
Yeah.
we get punished every single year. In 22, people say, "Oh, look what you did in 22." Viking fans didn't expect that. We knew our defense was horseshit,
Sure.
and Saquon and Daniel Jones came in, and it was honestly, I tell people, "What happened in 22?" That was our plan to get Daniel Jones, man. That's how we ended up with Daniel Jones on our team. He gets paid.
You
They
got
get rid of
paid. Yep, you got to
Saquon.
pay.
Yeah, right. We bring him back. They pay him. We got your quarterback. Wait till next year. O'Connell says, you know what, Daniel Jones, you're the new MVP. You're going to throw 40 touchdowns this year. That's how we do it here now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
I could
ridiculous.
also blame the Vikings for the Eagles getting Saquon Barkley because this all happens if you guys beat up on the on the Giants. There's no way they sign Daniel Jones to that ridiculous 160 million contract. They stick with Saquon Barkley. They trade up, get Jaden Daniels, and the Giants are a good team, and their fans aren't as bad as the Eagle fans. But now they have Saquon Barkley, so I blame Minnesota.
Yeah, well, the Giants. I mean, what a mismanaged whole organization. I mean, to give Daniel Jones the bag, and you got this guy Saquon when he's healthy is just a game changer. And
Yeah.
clearly this year, I told someone it would be because someone said, "Why do you get so upset about it?" I go, "Because imagine if Adrian Peterson in his prime went to the Packers,
Yes.
and I have to see that asshole twice a year running it up our dingus every time he gets and he's angry." And I think that Hard Knocks thing to see how Joe Shane was like, meh. We'd love to have you back. If they throw some money, call us. Like, hey, I know my very much hotter cousin's going to take you on a date. If let me know what restaurant he takes you to, and instead of Shake Shack, I'll take you to In-N-Out.
Applebee's.
Like, yeah, right, yeah, well, yeah, exactly, Applebee's. I was trying to think of something a little higher, just a little higher because it is still the Giants. But I mean, that was such mismanagement, and so
Oh,
to see that happen, it
he
was
was
just
so
like kind of
smug about it
ridiculous.
too. Like, you really think anybody's going to pay this guy $13 million? We don't want to sign a $40 million quarterback just to hand it to a $13 million back. Like, you're right. You don't want to sign a $40 million quarterback to begin with. Not
Who
someone
had one good season?
who had
Yeah.
one good season, and it was 15 touchdowns. Like, what? What?
That team was all defense. They had such a good defense that year, and they
Yeah.
could do a lot of different things. And Saquon was, I mean, in that playoff game, people asked me what the difference was. I didn't feel like it was Daniel Jones. I felt like it was Saquon.
Oh yeah.
And it was a comparison. We throw a swing pass out to Delvin Cook, and if the ball was here or here, Delvin could catch it. If it was here, 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 or here, he couldn't, and Saquon could, and he destroyed us that game. He just destroyed us. So in 22, I never, and going back in 22, I never, even though we were 13-3, I never really felt, or 13-4, I never really felt like we had great moments, but I didn't think that was a team that was built to win because the defense, I'm telling you, dude, the defense in 22 was like 31st in the league. It was just a mess. And every time we'd lose, it was by 40. I mean,
Yeah.
the Cowboys come in, whomp us. We go to Detroit or Green Bay, they whomp us. I mean, every loss we had that season was just a fucking beatdown. It was an
And
absolute beatdown.
to be fair too, like, and this is not like piling on or whatever, but I feel like a lot of fans on the outside felt that way about the Vikings too. They didn't
Yeah.
necessarily feel that team was legit
Yeah.
because there were so many one-score games and the defense was so poor that
Yeah.
we're like, are they really? Because remember, when you beat us earlier in the season 28-24, and then we played you guys later in the year, and that's when the Lions went on that 8-2 win streak to like go to 9-7. we were
Yeah.
favored in that game in Detroit. And the reason is because the Vikings were kind of trending down. Even with their record, the lines were trending up. So I don't think people believe in it.
Yeah.
They believe in this Viking team. They know this team is legit. But I was going to ask you, John, what does what is Viking fans? What do you guys think of Jared Goff? I know you mentioned earlier, oh, he might have one of those golf games. Do they just look at him as like a big goof that is not really good? Because we tend to get that feeling on the outside. That's why it's that Detroit versus
Yeah.
everybody, because we feel like Goff doesn't get respect for what he does. So what do you guys think of?
You know, I will say this. I watched that Hard Knocks when Goff was out in LA, and I sort of felt like I, f- I felt he was miscoached, right? I
Yeah,
felt like he was a great thrower of the football. He doesn't get enough credit for that. Like, he can make throws that very few other quarterbacks in the league can make. I believe that, right?
sure.
He's not an ultra mobile guy, but he can have good pocket presence. So I think like LA Goff, I think people kind of put that on him that when Detroit gets him, without McVay, he will even be worse, right? I don't think they anticipated what Ben Johnson would be. With that being said, it's kind of like the same thing that happened with Darnold. When you put a guy around credible coaching, around a super load of talent, and Goff, I think I like I said earlier, I think having that offensive line is paramount for him.
Sure.
Because people forget he was in the first round of the draft, and he was one of the first draft picks. I mean, was he number one
He was
overall?
number one overall. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so to think that this guy couldn't be capable of it, somebody saw something. I think Viking fans have sort of figured out that, especially in that first game, with the two games of that part of the season for you guys. I mean, it was like what did he set the record for most? Either set the record or got close to set the record for most completions in a row.
He
Like
said
it
it.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, like ridiculous. And so I think the worm has turned here. I think we all, as Viking fans, sort of hope that he'll have what we used to call a golf game, the goof game, where he'll just kind of fall apart. And then when it happened in Houston, which that Houston thing is sort of shitty because a couple of those, one of them was a Hail Mary at the end of the half,
Yeah.
right? So there's four. Another one or two were tipped. It's like, okay, so really it's two or three if we're splitting hairs. Now they all show up as interceptions, but I watched that game. And so it wasn't like Goff just the wheels fell off. And you guys won the game. For fuck's sake, you turned the ball over, what, six times, five times? And
Yeah.
you still win the game. So I,
That's what
it's the same sort of thing. I guess the answer is it's the same sort of thing people give Darnold. He's just done it for more years. I can't look at Jared Goff now and say that isn't a guy who could win a Super Bowl because I do think that's a guy that could win a Super Bowl. That offense is it scares. I mean, it keeps people up at night
for
because
sure.
with your defense, I said to people all the time, like I'm not shitting on the Lions. I say it every day when I'm on my lives. I don't shit on the Lions. Like that Lions team, yeah, their defense may be beat up or whatever. Those things can score 40 points a game
Yep.
without even blinking. And they were a couple mistakes away from beating the Bills.
Right.
That was a fun game. That might have been the funnest game of the year, honestly. That game was,
Yeah.
oh Lord, that game was fun, boy.
Like, I'll be honest with you, a rematch with the Vikings, like, I don't know which way it'll go. If, like, let's say we're healthy, I would think Detroit can win that game. I, I
I
would
think
I
so
would
too.
I would expect us to, but I know it will be a toss up. If we played Buffalo again healthy, we would for sure beat Buffalo.
Yeah, I
You know
think
what
so
I
too.
mean? Like, it's like Buffalo. Buffalo, I know they play well. Buffalo is not in the same caliber as Minnesota and Detroit. Just to be completely honest, but
I think you're right.
they have that
Yeah.
quarterback and he has a name, and because of that name it resonates with people, and so it gives teams a little bit more of a push, from fans and media, because when you see a Allen or you see a Jackson on the back of the jersey, it's like regardless of what the team is, you always think that their potential is higher than what it really is. But when
Well,
you
and
have a golf,
they play in a ratty ass division
yep,
too.
yeah,
They play in a just awful division.
oh,
And
terrible.
again, you win the games, you win the game. That's the thing, like schedule's tough because you play the games you play. And someone said, "Well, look at the cupcakes the Vikings have played, blah blah." I said, "Do you realize that the Lions play three different teams than we do every year?
Hmm.
Like that's how that works.
Yeah,
Like so if someone in your division, oh, they have a weak ass schedule. Well, here's the thing too. The Vikings were the third place team. The Vikings had the third place schedule because we were the third place team.
right,
That's how this works. So to kind of even it out.
yeah,
But I would say this, if you and I believe this, if you guys if your defense had stayed healthy, I didn't know a game on your schedule where you guys would have lost. And I felt that at the beginning of the year. because I knew who Carlton Davis was. That scrappy little God, he's scrappy,
Yeah.
and he's not afraid. He'll push the limits until he gets called.
Right.
Right?
Right.
He's the kind of guy that he'll grab, he'll tug, he'll pull, and he did in that game against us. He grabbed, he tugged,
Yeah.
he pulled,
Yeah.
and unless they're going to call it, I mean, if you're Carlton Davis, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're a veteran. The refs know who you are. They know you're going to do a little bit of that, and the refs will never say it, but they do go, well, yeah, but I mean, catch the ball or whatever, right?
Yeah. Happens in basketball
So,
too. You
yeah,
get
yeah.
calls because of your name.
Well, and exactly, you just kind of grind on the refs. They sort of know. This is the thing. Like when I was predicting what would sort of like diminish the Lions, in my mind, I I wish I was good enough to predict, 30 season-ending injuries, right? Or IR injuries, because then I'd make a bazillion dollars. Nobody could have ever predicted, specifically on defense.
Yeah.
And I think too, if somehow the Vikings don't make it through the playoffs and the Lions do, it will be because they get a couple of their defenders back and their offense stays strong. If you guys lose, and heaven forbid, but if you lose Amon Ra, or specifically Gibbs, if you lose Gibbs, I think he's really the cog. If you lose him for any significant amount of time, I think the Lions are going to have a hard time scoring 40 points every game.
Sure.
And I think right now you have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do that to win games. And I'm not trying to diminish the Lions, but I think with where your defense is, and I think your coaches know that. Like,
Oh yeah.
it's pedal to the metal. I'm sure Campbell went to Ben Johnson and said, hey, you remember those Ben Johnson games we need every few weeks? We're going to need those for about 6 weeks.
Stumble bump times two. We like
God, that
listen.
thing. That'll be on the NFL honors because it's just like, and he stole that from what, the Packers? Where a guy almost fell down. It wasn't intentional.
No.
The guy like tried to fall down. He goes, you see the way the defense come up on that? Like, who does that? Like,
I love the
first
way
off, get a life, Ben Johnson, right? Can you not watch film while you're eating your Cheerios in the morning? Like, give the rest of us a chance to
love
catch
that
up. Like,
guy,
it's
man.
just ridiculous.
I
Yeah,
know. I know.
I know. The thought that you guys might lose him, and your coaching staff is just a collection of characters.
Yeah.
And Glenn Campbell, Johnson. They're just a collection of characters. They're really so similar personality wise. It's kind of funny.
Antoine
It's kind of funny
Randall.
that way.
Like
Yeah, it's just and I will say this: one of the things that I really like about the Vikings, and their coaching staff, and I think what gives us an advantage in a lot of these games, the Vikings actually have, I think, 30 members on their coaching staff. Like, it's a huge coaching staff. In fact,
oh,
Bud
wow.
Grant said a couple of years ago, Bud Grant said, shit, when I coached, I had to beg them to get me my 9th coach. Like, I couldn't have that many coaches. The Vikings actually have a guy who handles down and distance, who handles timeouts, who handles replays. He handles all of it.
Oh wow.
And he radios down to O'Connell and says, yep, let's do a replay or let's ask for a challenge. Like, he handles all that. But I think the benefit of having like Brian Flores isn't just the defensive side of things. It's like having another head coach
Yeah.
that can coach half the team.
Yep.
And so I think it frees up O'Connell to just kind of do what he does. And when you look at his one score record, I think the difference this season versus 22 is it wasn't like, okay, you're in Buffalo, they got to run the clock out on the 1 yard line and Allen fumbles in the end zone.
Right.
Like that game, I don't know if you watched that game.
Yeah.
Dude, I had 7 heart attacks. Like, it was, okay, now we're going to lose. Okay, we're just 4th and 19. They'll never convert this. Wait, Justin Jefferson, the greatest catch he ever made, the Odell Beckham on the sideline. Okay, we got a chance.
Yeah.
And then it's, oh, God, Cousins got killed on 4th down. They got the ball. They got, a minute and a half left. This game's done. And then, oh, wait, Allen fumbles in the end zone and we recover. What?
Yeah. That was
I mean, it was just
insane.
It was, but that's part of the reason in 22 I kind of felt like, oh, this thing, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and that you can't rely on that sort of shit. The one thing that worries me about the Vikings into this game is we are a team that has had a turnover every single game this year.
Really?
Where we've turned the ball over. Yeah, we're the only team in the NFL that's had the other team turn it over at least once every game.
Wow.
And I think the Lions have had 5 or 6 games where they didn't turn it over.
I think the stat was it was the most in NFL history. 5 games of 40 points and no turnovers.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're swinging the ball around like that, you would expect something bad will happen. So to keep that streak going, I think for us to win, we're going to have to get a turnover. We have to at least get one turnover. We have to be able to keep the time of possession in line.
Sure.
in the games we've had struggles with this year is when the time of possession got real wonky because then the defense gets tired. And I know Detroit, you watch tomorrow, Detroit's going to press that thing down the field all day long. It's going to be, hey, we just got to stay on the field.
Yeah.
That's what I don't know. You could see 40 yards out of Jamison in a throw, but I think more than that, you're going to see Jameer to the right, Jameer to the left, pass over the middle of Laporta. Okay, that's a minute, and that kind of thing. I mean, I just don't know. I think that's the recipe for Detroit. Do you think I'm wrong?
No, you're not wrong at all. You're not wrong at all. Like they're gonna have to play like they've played the last, few weeks, just 40 points, 40-point games. Because if if we can give up, 34 points to Brock Purdy, this Minnesota offense is far more explosive. I expect 30 points out of Minnesota. I just hope it's not more than that. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
think that has to be the recipe. You get everybody involved, you spread the ball around, and you take care of the football. That
Yeah.
Montgomery fumble return for a touchdown against Minnesota, that was devastating. Like, and then obviously we turned the ball over on downs at our own 30-yard line. Like, those are two critical plays. Like, if we take care of the ball, it'll put us in a better position. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
that's what I
for
hope.
sure.
Right? You're looking forward to turnovers, and I'm looking forward too. Like it's funny, like you were saying with golf. You're looking for that golf game. It's like with Darnold, like this is he's had an excellent season. It is his one good season that he's had. Like when you look at his entire career, he
Yeah,
hasn't had any other great seasons. He had his rookie year was 19 and 12, you know what I mean? Touchdowns,
yeah,
interceptions. But this is his first season, I think, over like 95, quarterback rating. So it's like he's playing excellent. Is he closer to Jared Goff or is he closer to Geno Smith? You know what I mean? And only time will
yeah.
tell, but what I know right now is he's playing like an MVP type candidate. I'm hoping that he regresses to what, we all want him to be in Detroit, but who knows?
Yeah.
If he ascends, what does Minnesota do next year?
Yeah. I, that answer changes every week. I promised I would never answer that question again because listen, man, we're just going to New Orleans. We'll sort it out
That's
afterwards,
right.
right?
That's right.
But to answer it quickly, I would say this. I think short of a Super Bowl win, I think the Vikings franchise him for a year.
Okay.
They talk about trading JJ. I don't think they trade JJ.
Ooh,
I just don't.
I
I don't
love
think they
JJ,
trade him.
man.
I know everybody from Michigan loves him. I met the kid once. Super nice kid, very polite. I mean, just he seems like a very cool kid, right? And seems like he's a Tom Brady esque where he could just. I feel like he walks in the room and everybody just like would die for him, right? They would basically do anything for him. He's just a gamer.
Yeah.
But I think so. I think so. But if I believe when the Vikings win the Super Bowl here in February, they're going to re-sign. Don't laugh. Stop. Just
No,
stop.
it is certainly possible.
Stop pissing on my dreams, Brian.
It's
I mean,
possible.
we're having a conversation about the Lions going to the Super Bowl. Like this isn't fan fiction. Come
I,
on.
it's
For
so
fuck's
funny.
sake.
Both of our
Vikings
franchises.
here. Yeah. A Viking and Lion fan walk into a bar, right? That's this joke, right? As Packer and Bears fans saying, "Hey, listen, dicks, look at all these."
Yep.
Um but yeah, I just what I want is just one ring so I can go to Packers and Lions with my ring
Yeah.
and go like this, right?
Yeah.
That's all I want. Packers Bears fans. But no, so I think when we win the Super Bowl, I think they would sign Darnold to a 3 or 4 year deal.
For
I
sure.
think we'd be back in the because why wouldn't you? I mean, for you to say, okay, thanks for winning us the Super Bowl. It's been nice knowing you. Because
Right.
I think they would have brought Keenan back for another year in 17 if he wouldn't have dogged out in the NFC Championship. I think what they saw in 17 was a guy with a weak-ish arm who the players loved, but so what if he's cheap? That's not the guy that's going to ascend us to the next level.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, Rick Spielman thought that was Kirk Cousins, and he's the only one in the world who thought that. But I love Kirk, but he's you
He's
know,
bounced. He's
he
done.
can come back. He is. He can come back in 10 years. Atlanta misused him. I'll give him credit for that. He can come back in 10 years, and you'll let him blow the Galler horn, and hopefully he keeps his shirt on this time because that was gross.
Kirko
And
Chains.
oh god, that was gross. He's up there with no him and his son are up there with no shirts on, like dude. And he's not some flabby guy, but still,
No,
it's
for
like,
sure.
dude, this is a family show, right? But it was yeah. So that's what I think. I don't think it has to hinge on the Super Bowl, but I think it would. I mean, I think when he wins the Super Bowl, I just don't think you can say no now just for logistical reasons. Like you just won a Super Bowl. and your team will be different. But as long as you have Justin Jefferson, and as long as you have your quarterback, and as long as you have Addison, I mean, you mix in Hawkinson there. It's really, and that's one of the things I think will be one of the things we use tomorrow is Hawkinson,
Yeah.
because I think it's like, okay, so you have Terry and Arnold back there, who I think is set for a huge career. I think he's great. He talks a little more than I like for a rookie, but he's very confident. But you got Terry and Arnold, Carlton Davis. He's not in, but you got Branch and you have Joseph. Okay, so you got Terry and Arnold, who's going to cover Jefferson. A lot of that they'll have the Branch shadow or the
Yeah.
Kirby Joseph shadow, right? Okay, and
Well,
then
so real quick, John. So what I'm hearing is that they're going to have Melifonwu potentially play the other safety and bring Branch into the slot, which means Branch may be covering Jefferson if Jefferson goes into the slot. Because I'm hearing, and you would know better than I would, but I'm hearing their plan is to light up the Lions with the slot because we give up more slot yards than anybody in the league. So
yeah, yeah. Do you think if that's the case, I think it would be a better matchup to put Addison in the slot, because that would be a tough matchup for Branch. I love Branch, but Addison or Naylor, they're both very fast. So the point is they're going to have to double somebody, and that's been the thing that's benefited us is,
yeah,
okay, so double Jefferson. There was a play, I don't know if you watched the last game against the Packers, but there was
both of them.
the Naylor touchdown, the touchdown. You all watched the all 22. I'm not shitting you. There were 5 guys on Jefferson.
Yes,
And Naylor got behind. And Naylor, just FYI for your Detroit friends, Naylor may be the fastest guy in the Vikings.
I
So
believe it.
yeah,
I believe
that
it.
guy, he just couldn't stay healthy, and he had a couple he dropped one against the Rams that would have won us the game. Whatever. I mean, in the NFL, shit happens, and you can't care about what happens in Week 7. I mean, you just after Thanksgiving, that's when things matter. But so I mean, who are they? So they double cover Jefferson, great. You maybe get a shade of guy over on Addison. Okay, now you got Hawkinson. Oh, by the way, Josh Oliver's no giveaway. What if Aaron Jones sneaks out of the backfield? And that's what I loved about O'Connell last week is not to get deep in the weeds with the Vikings, but okay, so you need this drive. You need to get a first down. And even Tom Brady's like, okay, well, they're going to find Jefferson. It's an Aaron Jones drive.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck, Aaron Jones wasn't in the game. Jefferson touched it once. CJ Ham, our fullback, and Cam Akers, our backup running back, were the guys that got the first downs.
Yep.
And I mean, so I don't know. People piss on Cam Akers. He's had 2 Achilles injuries.
I
I
like
think
him.
Cam Akers is poised to have a big game tomorrow because he can catch the ball. He's deceptively fast. He
Listen,
blocks like a freight train. That game where he tore his Achilles last year, he hit an Atlanta guy whose grandkids are going to feel that hit. I mean, he's a destroyer of men on blocks.
Cam Akers, I can see them using him in a role similar to how Buffalo used Ty Johnson. He had over
Yeah.
100 receiving yards out of the backfield, and he's the second running back. Our linebackers are so decimated that when it comes to Hutch, or I'm sorry, when it comes to Hawkinson and it comes to receiving running backs, that's what I'm concerned about because I think they're going to try their best to double Justin Jefferson. He's the best receiver in the league, so they're gonna have to. And then it's like Addison, you're gonna have to do your best, but maybe cover 2. We'll see what happens, but it's the tight end and the running back position that can just eat away. Just can take first down until they're down the field in the red zone. So that's my biggest concern defensively.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. It was this whole season. Hawkinson had a season-ending knee injury last year.
Yeah.
We've talked about that.
Yeah, I
Talked about
forget
how
what
that
happened, but
happened. We talked, yeah. I was at that game actually. It was the whiteout game. Not that I remember it, but we waited all season for him to come back, and it's been a slow burn with Hawkinson.
yeah.
And I think here's the thing: like Detroit fans are really hot on Hawkinson, like, oh, that guy's a bum or whatever. It's like,
No,
hey,
he's not.
listen. Well, I know, but there's a lot of Detroit. It irritates the shit out of me because there's a lot of Detroit fans who are like, "Oh, fuck Hawkinson, he's whatever." It's like, dude, he didn't ask to be traded. He asked to be paid, and when he wasn't going to get paid, they traded him, and
Right.
it worked out good for both teams. So,
Absolutely.
what's the deal with some of the hate for Hawkinson? What is that
I-
hate?
I'll tell you. This is exactly why people have certain feelings towards Hawkinson. It's because Bob Quinn and Patricia picked him at number 7. When we knew we needed a pass rusher, we wanted there was a few guys that we wanted. We wanted Josh Allen from the Jaguars. You know what I mean? I think he got
Yeah.
taken right before him. We knew we needed a pass rusher, and we're like, there's no way we're going to spend a high pick like that on a tight end. Like we had Ebron before. You know what I mean? Like what? He's gone.
Yeah.
Do we need that? So
Who played better after he left you, by the
he
way?
absolutely, and
Yeah.
that was what he
Yeah.
went from Stafford to Luck. He
Yeah.
upgraded. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yep.
so for me, you draft him at 7. We had a lot of there was a lot of anger towards our management as far as why do you pick a guy like that? And then when he leaves, Hopkinson made the comment, it'll be nice to go to somewhere where I can play meaningful games. So it was like, we felt like he was taking a
Yikes.
shot at Detroit.
Yeah.
And then we got Laporta, and it's like, well, screw this guy. You know what I mean? So it's like, the guy's talented, but it's kind of like, oh, you want to go somewhere and play important games?
Yeah.
Now look, we're playing important games
Yeah.
too.
The new girlfriend's always hotter,
Always.
Brian, right?
Always.
I mean, always. It doesn't matter if you dated Giselle Bundchen. The new
Yeah.
girlfriend is hotter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. And Laporta's been very good for you
Yeah.
guys. I don't know whatever they're doing down in Iowa. Just keep short of Noah Fant, who's sort of a bum,
Right.
who's had nobody to throw to him, right? I mean, it's been like a pack of nickels. It's been a pack of nickels and some Wrigley. I mean, it's
Seriously.
been terrible for Noah Fant. But yeah, so okay, well, we've been on here an hour, which is fine by me. It seems like why haven't we done this before now?
I know it probably just
Seriously?
timing.
Yeah.
My wife and I, son, we moved, so it's like I haven't been as consistent on TikTok as I normally have. So that's probably why we haven't crossed paths as much. But when this came up and I saw it, I was like, I knew we had to do something. This is too big. It's a history game,
Yeah.
and it probably
until
will.
we play in the NFC Championship, this will be the biggest game in our history.
Wouldn't
right?
that be crazy? Wait, is that possible? I'm trying to think.
Well, if you go to the 5, I think it could be.
Yeah.
I think it could be.
Yeah. So
I'd have to play out the scenario. So I mean, I think it's possible
that would mean
in the NFC Championship.
Yeah, that mean all of the higher seeds would have to lose. Yeah.
I mean, well, but break it down. Philly could lose.
Yeah.
Philly could lose. I mean, it's possible, and then wherever it falls in, Rams or Bucks. I mean, those teams could lose. I don't think on the back end of the NFC that there's. I don't think there's any team you look at them and go, that's a team that's going all the way. There's nothing in their way now. I don't feel that about the Vikings. I think it helps us when we win on Sunday. I think that helps us being at home because that place is. I'm all positive vibes. I can't even think about losing because.
Sure. No,
listen, man, I'm on the upward trajectory.
If you guys win, it'll just set up a great rematch in the playoffs.
I just don't want a division game, man, because God dang it. Because here's the thing. If we were to lose to just say Rams or Philly in the NFC Championship, right? We see those jerks once every 3 years, like, whatever, whatever, who cares? But if we were to lose to Packers or Detroit in the NFC Championship, I work at that place, man. For the rest of my life, I'm going to have some dick coming into me saying, hey, how about that NFC Championship? We beat you guys, blah, blah. Yep. And I have to go, why do I work here? so I have to think about my future. A lot of people are just like, it's a team we don't care about. Yeah, but I got to see those guys, especially in the division.
Absolutely.
So I'll just say this. So do you do score predictions?
I do from time to time, for sure.
Yeah. So why don't you give out your score prediction for tomorrow? And like I said, if you pick the Vikings, I'm not going to make you feel bad about it. If I were you, I would do the same thing.
I'm going to say 38-38 tie. Lions get the number 1 seed. No.
Yeah, and you know why they played that game in San Francisco? That's why. That's why yeah, exactly. Everybody thinks I'm crazy. I said the reason they're playing is because that's the tiebreaker.
Yes.
Damn it. Yes. I knew it, man. I knew Detroit had that little thing hidden away. I knew it. God, if that happens that way, Brian, I swear to God, I'm going to figure out where you live and I'm coming there. God damn jinx. Oh, no. I tried, because I mentioned it in one of my lives like 2 weeks ago. I'm looking at these tiebreakers. I think if Detroit wins out, I think that win could mean in a tie. And one of my guys who's a Bears fan who comes in there, he says, don't even think that way. I said, man, this girl's cheated on me 7 times.
Yep.
That's why I got 19 cameras at my house, right? I
Right.
mean, like I got to know who's coming and going. I have mail delivered 4 towns away, right? Like I can't take the chance. And so, yeah, I think about these things because like some people have like a plan A, B, and C. I'm on like plan Z right now.
Yeah.
Like because I have to think about these things because I've just been wounded too much. So,
Final
anyways, your score
prediction.
prediction, yeah, your
So
score prediction for tomorrow.
my score prediction, I think the Lions score 38 points, which I do think is a lot on the Minnesota defense, but has happened, and I think Minnesota puts up 35. I think it's going to be
Yeah,
and I think it's going to be one of those field goals in the final, 30 seconds. Jake
yeah.
Bates, just like the
Jake
last game.
Bates. Jake Bates. Is he a master?
I think he is. If you saw that video of him stretching on the field, it
I did.
please look it up. It's the most. They were
No, I
talking
did.
about
I
his hip.
saw it.
He had his
It's like
tongue out. It was ridiculous. I'm like, is he laying down doing hip exercises? It was insane.
kickers. Don't even kickers, man. I don't even. The last thing I want to talk about kickers because our kicker's name is Reichard, Reichard, and one of the guys on radio this week said, I used to be really full Will Reichard, and now I'm sort of Will Reich soft because he ever since his injury he just hasn't been quite the same kicker.
Mm.
I actually said it would be 35-27 Vikings, and people say there's no way you'll hold the Lions under 40. I go, here's the thing. I think if the Vikings control time of possession and we win the turnover battle, I think I think that we can get away with it holding you under 30. I think people think I'm crazy.
Not at
This
all.
defense, I think Flores has some things he's going to do because he always does. Um, and he's not had good experience with the Lions lately. The Lions have taken him to the woodshed. Johnson's had his way. I feel like this is a next level thing for our coaches.
Yeah.
I believe in O'Connell. I have to say I've loved this team my entire life, 47 mostly miserable years. Mostly miserable years because things just haven't gone my way. But I haven't believed in a coach like this my entire life. And like I said, I'm probably set up to get destroyed, but there's something about the calmness that he coaches with that I'm really attracted to.
Yeah.
Um, because even when things aren't going right, um, and when we had that penalty, and this is really what was big for me, we had that should have been a penalty on Darnold against the Rams where they ripped his face mask
Oh,
basically
the
clean off and
safety.
decapitated him. Yeah, that
Yeah.
safety. And it would have been the perfect opportunity to go into that post game and for O'Connell to say, well, the refs did this and the refs did that. And he said, we don't do that here. We don't do that here.
Yep.
We lost because we turned the ball over. We lost because, we didn't get enough first downs and we were on the field
Yeah.
too much. We lost because whatever the reason is, but hey, listen, he kind of took the philosophy I've always believed in because I've coached before. And we've had tough plays, basketball, softball, baseball, whatever I was coaching. And I said, here's the thing, football. And if you wait for the referees to save you, you've made so many mistakes during the game that you deserve to lose.
Yep. Agreed.
And so I'm not saying that I won't take a referee reprieve because, listen, man, it's all about the win. But if you wait for that and it doesn't come and then go, oh, the refs after this was blah, blah. Now that I hated that call in LA because when the refs take away an opportunity for you to play on something that was obvious to everyone in the stadium. In fact, the player got up after face masking Darnold and went like this
Yeah. Yeah.
because he knew that, the game was going to keep going. So again, 35-27 could end up being, I do think the Vikings are going to win, not just because I'm a Viking guy, just because I think we're a little healthier right now.
No, and I respect that.
I think in 3 or 4 weeks, you guys get your guys back. Davis could be back, right? He could be
Yeah,
back.
he could be. He could be.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you get your guys back, solidify some things. You know, who knows, man? Who knows?
No, I agree, and
And
that's the thing.
yeah.
Like I don't sit here and say, well, the Lions play well on the road as a way to like soften the blow if we lose. Because don't get me wrong, I'll be very disappointed if we don't pull out the number one seed just because of the season we had. Same thing with you guys, but it's like we still have a playoff game after this. And if
Yeah.
I expect Detroit to go into San Francisco and beat them last year? I absolutely did. If we
Yeah.
have to go on a road at any point, I expect Detroit to walk in there and beat the team, regardless if our defense. Hopefully, it does get healthy. But if it doesn't, then if the offense doesn't show up against Minnesota tomorrow, they better show up week one. Like we know
Yeah.
that we can, and I think that they will. I think they still have a lot left. I think Ben Johnson's saving quite a bit, and hopefully the health will come. But that is certainly a concern. The Vikings are certainly much healthier, and when you have two teams that are so equally matched, if one's healthier, I think the Vikings certainly have the advantage because of that.
Yeah.
But I hope Ford Field is as loud as it's ever been.
It will be. Yeah. And by the way, your black uniforms are fly.
Ooh, I
Those are
love
really
them.
good. They're so
Love
nice. And
them.
wait till you see the contrast on the white the Vikes are going to wear tomorrow. It's not their Winter Warrior, but it's their white all white uniform with their purple helmet. They've only worn it, I think, one other time in their history.
Oh wow.
So it's kind of a, in recent history. Yeah, and here's the thing too. I tell people, and people hate my TikTok, people from other teams, because I sometimes talk shit. But here's what I said the other night. Listen, you can call us frauds. Cool. It's cool, man. First off, a guy comes in, oh, your team's, 7-9 right now, whatever it is. First off, take that. Because I don't need to hear it from you. It's not you specifically, this guy.
Yeah.
And I said, we're 14-2, which entitles us to jack shit in the playoffs. But I will say this. At 14-2, you know what we can say? Bring whoever you want.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
you don't win 14 games in the NFL by being a fake, by being a fraud. But on the same token, Brian, you could be 14-2 or 15-2 and play your first playoff game, and the wheels sort of come off. You make mistakes because they're human beings. And that doesn't make your whole season a fraud or a disaster.
Not at all.
There's 32 teams in the NFL. One wins the Super Bowl.
Yep.
So let's say Vikings win tomorrow. We're 15-2. We lose to the 14-3 Lions. I mean, someone was going to lose.
Right.
So at the end of the year, let's say you guys are 15-4 and you lose, right? I mean, people are going to say, "Oh, that terrible Detroit team from 2024."
No.
No, they're not going to say that. They're going to say, "Hey, listen, at least you guys have sort of that built-in excuse if it doesn't go right for you," because
Sure.
the media will say, "Well, man, they had 30 guys out, right?"
Yeah.
And nobody wants that, but you got it. If the Vikings blow this thing, guess what? We're just frauds. Because
Right.
there's no logical. They are looking for that logical reason that the Vikings would lose.
Yeah. Because right.
Like in '98, what was our logical reason?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know how old a guy you are, but do you remember '98?
Anderson?
Why do you have to mention him
I'm
first?
sorry, man.
We were the greatest show on turf
Listen.
before the greatest show on turf.
You know why? Because I was a big Dirty Birds fan. I love Jamal Anderson. So I'm talking about the kicker first, but Jamal Anderson was also my favorite running back because like Barry was, at the end of his career. And I love the Dirty Bird. I love that team. And so watching that game, he hadn't missed a kick all season. Good old Gary.
Well, and Atlanta, Atlanta was easily one of the best teams in the league that year that was kind of overlooked because the Vikings were blowing the doors off everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, Atlanta went to they hosted San Francisco with Garrison Hurst and they blasted them. And so coming in, I tell people this all the time. I wish I brought it in here. I have a shirt from 1998. It says NFC Central Division Champions, right? Because it was the Central Division.
Yeah.
And this was printed right after they won the division. At the bottom of the shirt in cursive, it says, "See you in Miami." That wasn't printed. It didn't say NFC Central. It didn't say NFC Champions. It said NFC North Division or NFC Central Division. And in cursive, right at the bottom, in yellow, it says, "See you in Miami." And I kept the thing because I thought, but that's how we were. Like I said, '98 was such a shock because what was going to derail us there and what it ended up being was shitty coaching.
Yeah.
Taking a knee. Twice taking a knee when you have the greatest offense that ever existed in the NFL at that point.
Yep.
You end up with, have two Hall of Fame wide receivers on that team, a really good running back in Robert Smith.
Yeah.
They draft Randy Moss And Jake Reed had 2,000-yard seasons before that. So people, when he drafted Moss, people go, "What are you doing drafting Randy Moss? We have Jake Reed." Well, now
Yeah.
you have 3,000-yard receivers on a team.
Yep.
And you know what that gets you? That gets you one of those missing rings episodes on NFL Network.
Yes, that Vikings team was so special, so special. Like Randy Moss, like outside of like Detroit players, like Randy Moss was my favorite receiver. Like,
Yeah.
obviously I love Megatron, outside of Detroit, Randy Moss was that guy.
Yeah.
That Vikings team, I love the talent that they had on that team. They were something else. Something else.
Randy Moss caught a lot of shit here in his career because he had some, off the field stuff. But I will say my kids, I've met Randy Moss. My kids have been around Moss. And I have to say, one of the most decent human beings in football I've ever met.
Yeah.
And he just had a real distrust of adults. I was in a line getting an autograph with my son. Randy Moss actually comes back, walks back 30 yards to sign an autograph for my kid. Couple kids there. He'd
Wow.
already walked past. Chris Carter couldn't be bothered with it. That's just Chris Carter. He's just that way, just very smug.
Yeah.
And always been nice to me, but he's a very smug individual. And Randy Moss comes back and he's signing this pillow of my son's, and there's this guy standing there with a card, a baseball card, probably about 50 years old. He hands it to Randy, and Randy says, "Nah, too old, dog, too old."
What?
Well, because he knew the guy was going to sell it.
Ah.
My son had this little Vikings pillow with like 30 signatures on it, and he's signing stuff for kids.
Yeah.
But adults, he didn't trust adults because they always did him dirty. He just never
Okay.
trusted them. So he says, "Too old, dog." And the guy went, "Oh,
Yeah.
listen, man, he knew what you were going to do with that. You weren't going to go put that in your collection. You were going to go sell that online.
Right.
That's what you were going to do."
I hear that. Yeah, I hear
And that
that.
was the difference. So, anyways, well, you know what? We may meet again, friend.
It's very possible. Very
We may
possible.
meet again. So, if for some reason, some fluke reason, the Lions end up in New Orleans, right? If the world hasn't ended and the Lions are in New Orleans, are you going to go?
I am thinking about it, but my wife is due to have this baby the first week
Look at
of
you.
March, so I feel like it might be. It's a couple weeks away. It's our second child, so she could pop at any time. So I'm like, and I talked to her about it. I was like, "Would you care if I go down there?" And she was like, "Not that I would, but you could potentially miss the baby being born." And I was like, Super Bowl.
Just get her in the car.
I know.
Just get her in the car, man.
I know.
Haven't you always wanted to go to Mardi Gras or whatever? I mean, that's the How many children do you have?
This will be my second. I have one
Oh,
right now.
very good.
Yeah.
So what do you have?
He'll
You
be
have a boy.
4 the end of this month. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome, man. Yeah, that's
Thank
really
you.
great. Yeah. I have 5 children myself, so
Awesome.
I have a 24-year-old, a 24-year-old and 22-year-old and a 9-year-old son. They're all
Yeah.
sons. And then I have a 18 and a 10-year-old daughter.
Awesome.
So,
Awesome.
yeah, so they're all really. I'm very blessed. I have very wonderful children, and I was married once and engaged, and the 2 women are great mothers to my kids, and they've always been very flexible with the things I like to do. And like going to London, I took my daughter to London this year. If you ever get a chance to go overseas to watch a game, absolutely 100%. If you can do it, do it.
Yeah.
England was terrific. The people were great. They love football. It's a wonderful, weird experience. And like you walk to the stadium, and there were a lot of Viking fans, and we were playing the Jets. A lot of Jet fans, but otherwise, people just wear random Mike Evans jerseys.
Really.
It was, I mean, dude, that NFL stadium is filled with jerseys of other teams. They
That.
just love the NFL. It's like, yay, NFL brand soup. That's what we love. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah. I
whatever.
like
They
that.
just love the NFL. And the NFL, why did people say, gosh, why do they play so many games there?
Of course. Absolutely.
You're,
Absolutely.
yeah, because they're just all football crazy over there. But
I would
yeah, I had
love
a good
to.
time. It's been a wild journey. The last 3 times the Vikings have played in London, they've made the playoffs.
Mm.
Because that was one of our home games we gave up in London.
Okay. So
So
you want to play in London next year too?
well, let's let's just get through this year. Dude, I have a budget, right? I'm not like some multimillionaire who's just like, I am getting my private jet ready for New Orleans. It's like, okay, well, if I sell this and well, how much blood or plasma do I have to give in order to get this? And then like if I take a mortgage on my one of my businesses,
Yeah.
I could pay that back here. I'm the cog has been going, especially when I went to London. And part of the reason I went to London is because I thought, I don't know how this team's gonna be. So I booked the trip and I thought in a season that may not be perfect, it'll be a chance for my daughter and I to do something unique.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was. Well, then now I'm sitting here going, like I was all about going to Detroit this weekend. And I sort of had it all arranged, and I'm like, at the end of the day, for me to go and do what I want to do, it's going to be $2,000.
Okay.
Between the flights, the tickets, the hotel, renting a car. And I thought, okay, in a month, theoretically, again, indulge me, we could have a game in New Orleans.
Right.
And do I want to spend, because I would guess conservatively, I spent $5,000 going to London.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So then I have to be able to justify, okay, hey, tickets are probably $5,000 a piece at least, if I can get one. Oh, and by the way, tickets to New Orleans, the hotel, whatever. I mean, I'm gonna if when the Vikings go to the Super Bowl, I've said I'm going to it. I don't care if I have to sleep in my flipping car. Like
I hear
I'm gonna
that.
go.
It
I don't care.
at minimum, just to be around Bourbon Street and soak in the atmosphere. Like going to the Super Bowl, the ticket would be probably way out of my budget, but like just to
Yeah,
be around that would be incredible. Absolutely
yeah,
incredible.
yeah. Well, when they had the Super Bowl here, I worked as security for NFL Network out at Radio Row,
Yeah,
and then I worked at the stadium during the Super Bowl. Dude, it's the Super Bowl. What can you say? It's
yeah.
the big one, right? I mean, to be at that game and
What
your
year was
team's in
that?
it. What's that?
What year was that with the Super
That
Bowl?
was
Was it
18.
18?
18.
Okay, because
Yep,
we had it back
18.
in '05 in Detroit.
Yeah.
That was Pittsburgh, Seattle.
Yeah.
So it's been a
Yeah.
minute.
Speaking of referees, Pittsburgh got, or the Steelers got dick, or the Seahawks got dicked in that game.
Yes, they did.
That should absolutely have been a Seahawk championship. And it was that whole Jerome Bettis, I'm home,
Yes,
we're going to make this thing. And it was the whole game I'm going, oh, Seahawks fans, I am so sorry because this is just Jerome Bettis's day.
I know. It was his
It was a
homecoming.
coronation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was, and everyone outside was like, oh, Seahawks. Then they said, "Don't worry, we'll give you one," and then you'll go to another one, and you'll throw the stupidest pass in the history of football. And what up? I mean, God, Richard Sherman, no,
Yeah.
which I don't
Yeah.
like Richard Sherman, but he's
Yeah.
like,
That
no, and
was
I was like,
insane. On the 1 yard
yeah.
line, and you have beast mode. Crazy plays. Crazy
Well, and
plays.
that guy, I mean, one of my favorite plays of all time, non-Viking plays, is the year after we lost to the Saints in the NFC Championship. They have to go to Seattle, and Seattle was what, 7-9, won the division,
7-9.
and then Beastquake.
Oh my God.
Beastquake.
That
I
was
don't think I've screamed as loud for any other game that wasn't a Viking game.
that was unreal. Unreal. To
Just
win.
run. And he takes Tracy Porter, that punk ass, and he throws him on the ground and runs right by him. And I thought,
Yeah. Yeah.
hey, Sean Payton, I got two of them for you.
I know
I
that's
just don't like
right.
Sean Payton at all.
I
I
don't
just think
even. I don't even.
he's just a douche.
I
I
hate.
and I make TikToks after TikToks just destroying that guy. Well, it's funny too because I know I make videos that are anti Kirby Joseph. Really, I mean, I just do it for clicks.
Well, you have to.
But
Yeah.
like a lot of my friends who are TikTok people, they're followed by the Lions.
Oh, nice.
They are. The Lions their social media has been very good. The social media for the Lions is one, very good, and two, they're very opening to other teams' fans.
I love
Not
that.
me.
I love that.
Not me. Not me. I haven't earned that yet. And someone said to me, I've been hinting at the Detroit social media to, have me come to the game, you get me tickets or whatever.
Yeah.
I go, it's funny, they pretend I don't exist. And I tag them in shit all the time, Brian. I don't understand it. It's never good.
I got to tag
It's
them. It's
never
funny.
good.
I know a couple of the radio hosts that work at 97 The Ticket.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I would love to get some type of connect in there, because they don't follow me, but I don't have a big following on TikTok. Maybe eventually they'll see some of my content. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, you have good stuff, man. And this has been great. I honestly, you're one of my favorite people on TikTok. And I
I
don't say
appreciate
that
it.
to
Same to
everybody. I
you.
mean, your stuff is so good and it's so thoughtful, and it's not, there's so much angry stuff like I do on TikTok where it's like, hey, how come you did this to my team? And you're just like, hey, we're going to lay out why we should have won that game, what we need to do better. You're very real about your team. You love your team, but you're also very much, listen, man, it's this or brown paper bags, and I choose to be positive
Yeah.
because it wasn't always good for Lions fans. And that's even at the stadium when Lions fans would come in. They were always very gracious and decent. And it wasn't just because they'd lost a bunch. It was because in order to have those jerseys, and a lot of them were Barry Sanders jerseys,
Of
or
course.
I saw some Kramer jerseys off and on. I mean, just whatever.
Yeah.
Um, to see those players or Megatron jerseys, and to see those fans come in and just still stick with their team, it says a lot about just who they are as people.
Yeah.
And I
Absolutely.
thought, listen, man, as a Vikings fan, uh, I know what it's like to be on the wrong end of things. You know, even when things go your way, they don't go your way.
Sure. Sure.
And I wasn't cheering against you guys last year in San Francisco when you were up 17-0, and that safety of yours, what's his name? He's now with the Eagles again.
Oh, Chauncey Gardner Johnson. I didn't like
He's
that.
clapping on the
I
sideline,
didn't
and I
like
thought,
that.
dude, don't.
Yeah.
Don't. It was like when Sean Payton, after they kicked the field goal in the Minneapolis Miracle game, and he's skull chanting on the sideline,
Yep. Yep.
and they showed that on the scoreboard, and the players saw that. And I would say, like, when that Tyreek Stevenson, he intercepts a pass in a meaningless game 3 weeks ago, and he's doing it. It's like, dude, don't do that, because every time someone does that, you know what happens?
Yeah.
Misery and doom. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the Nordic god saying, you can make fun of everything, but don't make fun of that weird thing we started doing since 16 in our stadium.
Right. And that the thing is,
You know?
that wasn't the culture of our team too. Like Chauncey
Yeah.
Gardner didn't fit because of that. Like we're not the type that's doing this
Yeah.
at halftime. Like if you want to do that after the game, if you want to wear a sweatshirt like Amon-Ra St. Brown does, about the Packers, like I'm all for it. But it's like play the game, let it be over with, then
Yeah.
talk your trash. Don't
Yeah,
don't
that's
do it.
Philly bullshit is what that is. That's Philly
Yeah.
bullshit.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Well, you know what, friend? Happy New Year to you.
Same to you.
Um, I wish you, after this week, I wish you much success.
I appreciate
Um,
it. So even for our
yeah.
rematch,
Well, if it comes to that,
I'm clipping
um,
this.
no, listen, if it comes to that, how crazy would that be?
That'd be insane. That I don't I
Yeah.
don't want it.
If it comes to that, I want you at US Bank Stadium. That's how I want it.
That's fair. That's fair.
Because that place, so I've had Adam Rank from NFL Network on my podcast,
Yeah.
and
Bears fan.
yeah. He does fantasy football for NFL Network, and he'll occasionally pop into my TikToks, just like
Oh,
roll in, and he'll say, "Hey, what's up?" And people are like, "Is that really Adam Rank?" But what's funny is I said when the Vikings make the NFC Championship at US Bank Stadium, I said I'd like to have you come as my guest. And he does basketball color commentating for Cal State Fullerton. And he said, if I don't have a game, he said, I'll come to US Bank Stadium.
oh wow, that's
So how
awesome.
cool would those TikToks be?
So cool, man. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Wow. So
Yeah.
John, you have what are your media platforms? You use TikTok and what else?
Yeah. So I use TikTok. It's Vikings Guy Day One ONE on TikTok, on YouTube, Instagram,
Got it.
and Lemonade, and followed. So but mostly it's TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Yeah.
Got it.
And the podcast for people, and you can do what you want with this one, but it's on Vikes Day One is my podcast.
Awesome.
We've had some cool people. Adam Rank's been on there. We've had Chad Greenway. We had the Vikings public address announcer at the stadium, Alan Roach.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've heard him. He's the guy who does the public address announcing for all the Super Bowls.
Okay.
He's
Yeah.
the guy do you play Madden at all?
I do, absolutely.
So the guy that says first down and 10, that background guy, that's our public address announcer.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty
Yeah,
sweet.
he's done 5 Olympic Games. He's the home voice of the Colorado Avalanche.
Okay.
He lives in Denver. So.
Yeah.
If you Google Alan Roach, he literally is the public address announcer for Pro Bowls, Super Bowls, all that kind of stuff. He's done 13 Super Bowls.
I was gonna say I know his name, and that's weird that I know
Yeah.
a public. Yeah, that's okay. So he
Yeah.
must be big. That's pretty awesome.
I think his first Super Bowl was in Detroit at Ford Field.
When the Lions made it.
Yeah, Lions. No, when the Lions, that's how the Lions previously have made Super Bowls, is by buying their players tickets and just flying them there.
That's
Correct.
true. That's true.
Correct. But yeah, he told me his first one was at Ford Field
Wow,
because
that's
I
pretty
think
cool.
who was it? He told a story about Stevie Wonder was there,
Oh wow. Yeah.
and Stevie Wonder was warming up or whatever, and they're announcing, and he says. He goes, I didn't know we had God at the Super Bowl. That's what Stevie Wonder said to him. We have the voice of God at the Super
Mm,
Bowl.
that's
Think it.
incredible.
How cool is that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's incredible.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I love
Stevie
I love
Wonder.
that.
I mean, how great is that? Yeah,
In the heart
very
of
cool.
Motown to see a guy like that. Yeah, I mean, just legendary musician.
Oh,
Legendary.
for sure, for sure. Yeah. So, all right, buddy. Happy New Year to you. Um, I regardless how the game goes, I'll probably send you a direct message or two or
For sure.
14.
Absolutely. This is all I hope for the game. I
Yeah,
don't want there to be any officiating controversies. I want it to be a
agree.
clean game. I don't want it to come down to a blown call or anything like that on either
Totally.
side. Just let it be a simple, clean game, and the best team for this day to win it. That's it.
And stay healthy.
Stay
Stay
healthy.
healthy.
Yeah,
Yeah. Get to the playoffs so that everybody's near-ish 90, 100%, so that our teams aren't shortchanged, right?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
God bless you, friend. Thank you so much, Brian.
Same to you. Appreciate you having me on, John. See you next time.
Peace.
Awesome.
Goal.